Today, more than 100 years after the 1915 riots, most people refer to that riot as the first time communal riots broke out in Ceylon. But that is not true. There were multiple riots that took place prior to 1915. One such riot is the Kotahena Riots, which took place in 1883, almost 3 decades before 1915. Before I start though, I must admit I'm a bit worried this might be misunderstood. I find it easier to talk about conflicts my own community was involved in, but worry that when I talk about conflicts involving other communities, that I might be misunderstood. However, I think because I am interested in studying peace and conflict and riots and helping people like me learn history, I must make this video. I will try to be unbiased and make it as non-sensational as possible. Let me know if you felt like I was framing it inaccurately or didn't do justice to this part of our history. So to make this video, I used research by Professor KM De Silva, Michael Roberts, and Arthur C. Depp. In 1883, there was an atmosphere of Buddhist revival in the country. This was forging ahead in the face of pockets of opposition from missionary organizations, government officials, and minority communities. And then on Easter Sunday in 1883 came one of the first outbreaks of physical violence directed against the Buddhists, the Kotahena Riots. So the government agent of the Western Province, in his administration report for that year, referring to these riots, mentioned that on Easter Sunday, a large number of Buddhists were proceeding to their temple at Kotahena when they were set upon by a mob of Roman Catholics. In the end, one man was killed, several others were injured, including policemen, bullocks were slaughtered, and the carts and their contents were burnt. The Roman Catholics and the Buddhists fought until the police was not sufficient and the military was called out. Now, since when were the Roman Catholics so violent in Sri Lanka? According to Professor KM De Silva in his book, Sri Lanka's Troubled Inheritance, Kotahena had long been regarded as a Roman Catholic stronghold, but it had also become the scene of considerable Buddhist activity after Migettuwatta Gunananda took charge of a vihara there. Gunananda was a monk and rose to popularity as a public debater against Christianity. The riots began and were directed at a festive procession organized by him on a large scale. In the weeks leading up to these riots, the anger of the Roman Catholics was gradually aroused by Gunananda's fiery speeches against them. In particular, they didn't like his long continuance of the festival, which extended into the Easter week and into Easter Sunday, a day for their religious activities. Now, what do the British, who are running this country at that time, do in response to the Kotahena riots? They react by imposing a set of rules. Now, these rules were received by the people as racially discriminatory rules. They imposed restrictions on all religious processions in Ceylon. This was especially hard on the Buddhists, for whom processions accompanied by music were an essential feature of their religious practice. In the years that followed, it was common for non-Buddhists to get aggravated when Buddhist processions didn't follow these rules set by the state. This helps us further understand why the Muslims objected to the music, the drum beating, and the passing of the procession by their mosque in Kandy 30 years later in 1915. In fact, between 1899 and 1915, at least 14 confrontations over what the research calls noise worship took place in areas such as Galle, Gampola, and Kurunegala. That's the quick story of the Kotahena riots of 1883. I hope it helped you learn something new from our past.